Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. It's a deep honor and pleasure to have two wonderful poets, Pam Ward and Lynne Thompson, with us today. Pam will read first, and then Lynne. LA native Pam Ward recently released her poetry book, Between Good Men and No Man at All, World Stage Press. Author of two novels, Want Some, Get Some, and Bad Girls Burn Slow, Kensington. Pam is a UCLA graduate, a recipient of a California Arts Council Fellow, and a Pushcart Poetry nominee. Pam edited the first anthology of Los Angeles Black women poets entitled The Supergirl's Handbook. Operating a design studio and teaching at Art Center College of Design, Pam merged writing and graphics to produce My Life, LA, documenting Black Angelenos and poster/stories. Pam has published in Chiron, Calyx, Abernathy, Voices of Leimert Park, and the LA Times. Her literary showcase, I Didn't Survive Slavery for This, was a multimedia poetic riff on life post-emancipation. Pam Designs runs a community imprint, Short Dress Press, and hosts Beyond Baroque's Wednesday night poetry workshop. She just finished her third novel, Bury My Dress on Central Avenue, a cocktail and jazz-infused drama about a Black actress vying for the top and her dalliance with a doctor, the prime suspect in the Black Dahlia murder, a crime so horrific, California closed its border. Pam Ward's poetry is authentic and personal. She's a chronicler of LA, past and present. She sings in her poetry. A radiant, superlative poet, Pam Ward.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. So here we go. So I wrote this poem. You know, a lot of my poems are based on truth. And if you've ever had kids, spying on your kids is part of the program. And I used to spy on my kids all the time. This is called Drop It Like It's Hot. If you ever dropped your daughter alone at a mall, 15, ponytail, lip gloss and jeans, dropping her alone to shop, dropping her unleashed to meet a friend, leaving her scrubbed, shiny and young, a pan of hors d'oeuvres, wearing her dyed and went straight to heaven grin. If you ain't ever cheesed a lie, waved and said, bye, y'all have fun, did the long fake out waltz like you strolled to your car, doubling back, watching them stop at hot dog on a stick, where their soft kiss spears your own lung, becoming bloodhound, watching them roam, stalking through coats, shoes, or scars, becoming mall cop, espionage mama, a female James Bond, feeling a time bomb tick in your bra. If you've ever clocked a walk, hunted behind T-shirts and feet, feeling the raw heat of murder while smelling fries and Dior, teetering between slaughter and Lord, please make the boy sweet, creeping around Foot Locker, Starbucks corners, pretending to like shit you don't need, eavesdropping while pretending to read. If you ever dropped your daughter and fell on all fours, sniffing up pretzel blood, letting your hem lick the floor, forgetting you wore a skirt, stifling a growl between molars, pounding C's Candy Teen Love, going store after store, then baby, you ain't never lived. Thank you very much. It's so weird to read in the quiet. Too bad we're not reading round robin. I love that style. Okay, here we go. let's stay in this zone and go into single mom. Are you guys hearing me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Somewhere between a burnt marriage, a greasy kitchen, and a gray 22, sandwiched between these smiling kids and my painted teeth, somewhere way off from coffee mugs, stained with yesterday's paycheck, rent due, that last final kiss, choosing between Disneyland or Sybil Brand, murder or Mr. Toad's ride, driving all the way from Anaheim to LA, anxious as an inmate, passing your house, your new car, your girlfriend's red bike, smashing the snails on my porch. Somewhere between what I didn't say in my black Ajax mouth, scrounging for words but spitting a shoe, with two of you in my back seat, sweet, dreamy lugs, tasting of grape juice and cherry. Somewhere between their breath at my neck, or them asking for water, or the fear they'll call some bimbo mommy, gnaws at me, yanks me straight back from the brink, makes me face one more sink full of dishes. Thank you very much. And this poem, it's called The Will to Live, and it's really based on anybody, I mean, even Ukraine and Russia, anybody having a fight right now with something, someone, something. Sometimes you just have to lay the gun down and think about peace. This poem is called The Will to Live. September 11th was my ex's birthday. Brother was a bomb scare too. He moved me from half sleep to full terrorist alert, turned our home into a battle zone of ripped clothes and smashed plates. But I made it through okay. Got me a bulletproof vest and a car alarm out of there. Not trying to be glib to the folks back east, but real peace starts in your living room, y'all, from your driveway to your back porch. So don't be driving through LA with your red, white, and blue, beating Mexicans looking Bin Laden to you, bombing mosques, all while singing, oh, say, can you see, thinking you have a hall pass to hate. Y'all kill me with your $5 patriotism scattering across these streets. The KKK wave their Confederates too, right from the back seat next to their shotguns. Same kind I cocked at my ex late that night when we both learned about war and the art of living through hate, surrendering to our own ways. I ain't trying to be anti, but don't be waving your flag and be beating your wife. Don't be standing on streets talking about being a hero when your ass is wreaking havoc at home. This ain't about war anymore anyway. It's more like standing for something you can bite in and taste, believing in something beyond bombshells and graves, sucking hot fuel from a woman with nothing but heart and a hell of a strong will to live. Thank you. And we are moving right along in the book between good men, oops, 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 and no man at all. All right. This poem was called Sunflower Seeds. And at first I had a thing on the back, you know, they have the back panel where you have a little blurb, which Lynne wrote a nice blurb for my book. Thank you, Lynne. And so I had one from the LA Times, which had, you know, sensational, declarative. And, you know, their real quote was cease and desist, because I used to impersonate a LA Times reporter just to go places and do stuff. But anyway, so it was funny that they actually published my poem. Thank you, LA Times. I stole a sunflower plant in front of the police station today. A wild, screaming yellow stalk, fighting a bed of angry weeds. I snatched it in broad daylight, yanked the root in my hand, grabbed it like it was already mine, carrying it boldly, carrying it royally, like a gold precious staff, or a stick, or a baton, like the kind slammed against Rodney's spine. I marched down the street in a single lady parade, daring somebody to stop me. I took the sunflower home, planted it in my yard, near the barely hanging on broccoli, near the sad and strip search beets, near the carrots that came out of nowhere. I buried it thinking about my son and how he liked salty black and white seeds and how his speeding ticket could have turned ugly when we picked him up that night if the officer wanted to trip. I buried the plant with some poems that didn't amount to much, something about waterboarding and Zimmerman whipping ass again. But my first thought when I saw it was the homeless lady Marlene, laid on the freeway, flat on her back, weather-beaten and wilted, shielding fist after fist, getting stole on, getting pummeled right and left hooks to the jaw, with him riding her stomach, riding her gut like a horse, hitting her over and over again in the face, like his uniform transformed him, like he was a king, trampling a Black woman like dirt, like mud underneath his feet. And I thought this lady could be my own mother, my sister, or me. So naturally, when I saw that flower, I rescued it from the police. Because sometimes you just have to march up to power. Sometimes you just have to combat the weeds. Sometimes you just have to snatch back what's yours, even if it's just a flower or a rock in the street, growing like a riot in the palm of your hand. Thank you very much, LA. Thank you, LA Times, for publishing my work. Lord knows you didn't know. All right, so this is a Hollywood group, and this poem is called Hollywood Hills. Every time I went over Kim's, her dad would come outside while we laid by the pool. It was a small, useless tank with horrible swamp green water where bugs hatch their eggs in the scum. Her dad would always come out there, checking the pump, fiddling with the gauges, sticking his wrists in the deep end. Kim leaned over and told me they were all in therapy now, ever since he fucked one of her friends. I watched him duck in the garage and emerge later, shot glass red, a Jim Beam smirk on his lips. He wades in and wet covers his thigh, hips, and gut, ballooning vulgarly over his shorts. His grin made me think of a zipper half down, a man whistling at kids while hosing his grass, my hairdresser begging me to suck it right there in the chair. And I know that it's out there, happening in Hollywood or Watts or Marina Del Rey. Every day there's a hand with a fistful of candy, a wet, hungry tongue resting over chapped lips, a fist waiting to scrawl your name on the stall, an arm luring you down underwater. Thank you very much. Luckily, we survived these things. And speaking of survive, this poem is for Josephine Baker. I just love Josephine Baker because she just said, enough of United States. I'll go and live somewhere else where I can get treated better. I just love that. So this is called Les Revues Negri for Josephine. Before Baldwin lifted a suitcase, before Chester Himes escaped, Josephine packed her bags and skipped off to France, severing ties with America, an umbilical cord strangling her neck. She boarded a ship, bailed the U.S., like bailing the backhand of a bad, brutal marriage. This Nubian princess, this queen of the bait and switch, had everyone going bananas, examining how yellow fruit curves, dancing nude except for her produce section skirt. 15 gyrating, penis-shaped smiling grins, happily tapping that ass, while everyone studied her circumference, which defied gravity and physics, dreaming of banana nut bread, banana pudding, banana splits. Josephine hid Nazi secrets on sheet musics or brassieres, or the ticklish part of thighs, living so large, so vast, so spread eagle wide, Saturn dropped her skirt and slow drag with Mars, causing Pluto to yell, "I got next." Josephine lived so big, clothes couldn't hold her back. Boogalooing in her birthday suit, refusing to kowtow or bow, except for her 7th or 10th or 12th curtain call. Hula hoop until the sun beamed up, or like bloomers fell down south. Touring London, Paris, Rome, or Berlin, showing the whole world how Black girls got down. Not with dust mops, not in aprons, not the back of the bus, but infamously untethered, living high on the hog, buying a chateau so east of the West ugly mess. Firebombs, German shepherds, the strange fruit strung on trees, courtesy of Uncle Sam's welcoming committee. And as the zookeepers of America gawked or angrily shook their fists, Lady Liberty did a two-step and shimmied by the sea, hoisting her worn-out gown, lifting till she screamed, "I see you over there, Josephine. Go on, girl, get it, get it." And way across the pond, nibbling bonbons, ordering prawns, sipping endless flutes of Vue or Moet champagne. The electric slide goddess blew a kiss to her rusty friend. "Mon chéri, you need to come back with me." And all the gorillas back in Africa, eating chiquitas, beating their chests, doing their best Josephine between branches and leaves, dancing a cha-cha, trotting a rumba, tossing peels in the street, gripping J-shaped fruit in their palms like a spear, honoring all escapees, praying for those still caged, remembering the Black girl, the one with gumption, the nude immigrant, who had the mendacity to leave her country, little Miss Parlez-vous Français, a Black woman who ran from home, sharing her clothes, shoes, and hair, severing herself completely, sailing far, far away, a gold star lighting the way. I think that's good, not right? Isn't that good for time?
Well, we can talk a little bit if you like. We have a few more minutes. Would you, what would you tell a young poet who was beginning? Would you tell her to, what would you tell her to focus on? An image, a words, or an idea? What advice would you give to a young woman who was sitting down to write poetry for the first time?
I would tell them to write about what they know, write about their truth, eavesdrop, try to find their own unique voice. I remember that was one of the best gifts that Michelle Clinton gave us when I took her class at Beyond Baroque, was that to just speak in your own natural voice, because that's where your truth is and that's where your language comes from. You can play with metaphors and decide what to do later, but to manufacture your own style and voice. I mean, I've had many poets come up to me a lot and say, "Pam, that is such an ugly poem," or "Pam, that's such a hard poem," or "Pam, you're talking about beating too much. Pam, when are you going to write a nice love poem?" Pam don't write love poems. I mean, I have written them. There's actually some in the book. That's not my forte. I like to preach and talk about particularly injustice to women that have survived, women that have actually taken the reins and saying, no, I'm going to go over here now. And so it's like a survival anthem. So I like to write about that. And anybody has a problem can step. As Wanda Coleman used to say, they would tell her, Wanda, why don't you just die? Well, until that day, I'm still write the way Pam Ward writes.
Well, I always like what you write when you stand up for injustice also. And your poetry is vibrant. It has strength of narrative. It's a lovely poetry. But, you know, so she's sitting down to write, and you want her to write from her voice, her experiences. What would you say to her to focus on? Where would you tell her to place her concentration right in the beginning of that poem?
Usually my poems start with an idea, like if I feel a certain injustice coming on and I feel a certain, usually I'm so motivated. Like when I wrote a poem about Jeremy Strohmeyer, I was so motivated. It was all based on an LA Times article that I read, and it gave such a graphic description of how he horrendously killed this very young 9-year-old Black girl that I said I just wanted to turn that into art and allow this young Black girl to live by surviving in the poem. And also it's the poem takes a curve and says, this is a ugly poem. It's for parents that gamble on faith, leaving the kids outside. So the poem doesn't back away from the parental responsibility. It's also a poem about injustice. And, actually after that horrific crime happened in Prim, California at the border, they changed the law and made it, because Jeremy Strohmeyer had a friend there, that if you actually watch a crime and don't help to stop it, then you can actually be tried. So things came out of it that were good. Another time, I'm influenced by rap music a lot too. And I'll read this last one. It's really short, but this was for Trayvon Martin, and Trayvon Martin's death by Zimmerman was the impetus for the Black Lives Matter movement. And so this poem is sort of read/sung to a tune by Cypress Hill, who wrote a piece called Here's Something I Can't Understand. Here is something I can't understand. How Zimmerman can kill a man. I'm just walking home from the store. Crazy ass starts a civil war. Hoodies on because the street is chill. 17 trying to get some Skittles. But here is something I can't understand. How Zimmerman can kill a man. Crazy ass thinks black skin is whack. Calls the cops. They tell him stand back. Girlfriend tells me to run away. Hell no, I say I ain't afraid. But here is something I can't understand. How Zimmerman can kill a man, beg and scream for him to let me be. Daddy lives in the community. I try to fight when I hear blam, blam. And Zimmerman just killed me, man. And Zimmerman just killed me, man. And Zimmerman just killed me, man. So if you have a passion about something that happened, I think you should write about it. And when I heard and I felt that case, it reminded me of that song that Cypress Hill sang, and I just blended the story with that. So I don't want to walk into Lynne's time. She's waiting there, and I know she has some great poems to read. Shut up, girl. You don't read with me. Lynne is a great poet.
Well, so are you, and so is Lynne. I agree with you, and you have so much heart. And I just love your poetry, Pam. It's always a pleasure when you come back to our program. You honor us with your great poetry. And our next poet is Lynne Thompson. Lynne Thompson is Poet Laureate for the city of LA and the author of 3 collections of poetry. Start with a Small Guitar and Beg No Pardon, winner of the Perugia Book Award and the Great Lakes Colleges Association's Award, and Fretwork, winner of the Marsh Hawk Poetry Prize. Thompson's recent work has been or is forthcoming in Black Warrior Review, North American Review, The Common, and Best American Poetry 2020, among others. Lynne Thompson, an original, inspiring poet, has what is essential for us in our time, a sense of harmony and unity. A brilliant, erudite poet, the poet laureate for the city of Los Angeles, Lynne Thompson.
Thank you so much, Harry. What a wonderful introduction. And as I said earlier, to read with Pam is a tremendous treat, particularly as this is International Women's Day. I'm glad that she and I can represent and talk about the things that we're passionate about. I want to start that way. I find it hard to believe that anyone listening to this or anyone anywhere is not horrified by what's happening in Ukraine. And so I wanted to begin with a poem, not of my own, but by a Ukrainian poet, Ostap Slavinsky. I hope I pronounced the name correctly. And the poem is entitled 1918, referencing World War I, and just proves what is one of my favorite sayings, is that we learn from history that we learn nothing from history. We keep doing the same dumb damn things over and over and over again. This is his poem, 1918. Sometimes even an exploding bullet leaves only a tiny mark. Likewise, all I remember from that war is how one day, towards the end, a horse fell off a platform when a train took a turn, and there was no one to come back for him, no one to pick him up from below the embankment. Kids gave him grass, and he lay there with broken legs and a dull eye, charcoal black, like a sign left by the retreating night to mark a path for the night that was to come. Ostap Slavinsky. And even though Pam and I didn't plan it, I so resonated with what she said about liking to talk and write about women who take the reins, because frankly, I don't know if she'd agree. They turn the world over to women, we'd be in a lot better place than we are right now. So this one is entitled Swing Low, Free, and I think by the end you'll know who it's about. As scout and spy, nurse and train, swing low, I went back south over and over and brought them out. Massabrodus tried to sell me. He failed. I turned runaway after, fled north and flaunted rules men made to foil our liberty. Led my kin, ma and pa, from the land of black-eyed Susans. I could not save all who bled my blood, but I led multitudes from Bucktown to Cambridge, Camden to Blackbird, trusted in Bakongo Mojo, in Kizi, Makalo. Relied on Hosa charms and the Igbo's blue and white coats hung from oaks, on doors, on countless quilts along the way. Their patterns steering us north by stitch, shoe fly, log cabin, bear's paw, wagon wheel, sweet swinging from porticos in Dover, in Smyrna and Odessa. Our field guides to the Choptank River. A cipher of bedclothes draped for an uppity Moses, oh, sweet chariot. I would live free or die. When I took the freedom and looked at my hands, I knew I had to be the same breaker of laws in Newcastle and Wilmington, Chester County and beyond, where I brought them up, brought them out. To the eastern shore where a mighty Jehovah was troubling the waters of slaveholders who named me Araminta, slave drivers who put a bounty on my head. Descended from Ashanti, I remembered Anansi, West Africa's trickster, followed the drinking gourd, and stole away to Jesus on Whirlpool Bridge, Canada, where I looked over Jordan. I had help. Fred Douglass and William Still and many Quakers who were almost as good as colored and could be trusted every time to burn bright the candlelight in their garrets. Always, I went back. Died March 10th. Crossed over free. Today, I am lauded and immortal, roots of struggle stitched on my bustle, faces of unnamed risk takers tatted on the skirt of a scout, spy, nurse, train, a woman singing, "We mean to live free." That, of course, is Harriet Tubman. And this piece was inspired by a book about an uprising in the area that's now Guyana called Berbice at the time. The book is Blood on the River, and if you get a chance to read it, it's an amazing, amazing book. A Rage on Berbice, 1763. Before I was north and south of a new country, I was divided from. I was a tactic. I was a slave trading port. Before I was remade as Amerindian, I was sugar as the main crop. Before I was overworked and underfed, I was selected for immediate punishment. Persuaded to remain a wooden gutter for collecting rainwater, ruled by terror and customary understandings before I was replenished by the arrival of 2 more ships. Before I was left for dead by frightened Europeans was before I was something black at the bottom of a buyer's cup. Before I was high up river in the jungle, I was gold and silver and a bounty paid to soldiers, prepared fields farther inland, the quarters where we captives slept. I was the fort burned and abandoned before I joined the Arawaks and squatted with a knife in my hand. Before I was traumatized woman hoping to make my way, I was the turning of the tide. Before I was awakened in the middle of the night, I was the bloodshed on the captain's bedclothes. Before I escaped the cooking pot full of Negro flesh, before I declined to implicate the others, before I was a witness to the execution of the women rebels and sentenced to vigilante injustice, I was a daughter who spelled you my name phonetically. I was woman with child, whose children's children have lived to tell you this. And so in addition to being concerned about the treatment of women coinciding with the power of women, I'm also really concerned about the environment. And I'm going to read a few poems that reflect that. This one is Cure for a Dead Zone. If oceans could eat us, they would surely like our saltiness, at least at first, and would have their craving for iron satisfied by our blood. Only later would oceans cringe at the taste of our lust, our greed, gluttony, and wrath, our overabundant garlicky stink. Earth would want to quench its thirst, but oh, what disappointment it would find in the dead zone that is the gulf of pick any spot. But if Earth could be inspired to eat itself, humanoids first, then the trees, the lakes, the mountains, the arid spaces, the llama, cat, hummingbird, gnat, the undeveloped lands, and what we have developed, buildings, roads, dumps filled with syringes, our books, Earth would love J. Milton and T. Morrison. Then do what we do, down that meal, swallow it whole or gnaw it beyond recognition, digest, then puke the potluck from our weary depths as waste to be disposed of, then start again. And this poem came from a newspaper article that I found in the Montana Standard. Not that I read that regularly, but I came across this. And I took a line from it. If you find a living snow goose, contact, and then they had a number. Snow geese in Butte, 2016. In the treasure state, snow geese are no longer flying. Gone quiet their honks, their high-pitched quacks, lost over the toxic Berkeley pit waters. The fallback of oil jerks. There are other reasons that they are dying, and we're not quite ready to release the hard numbers, whether they exceed the 300 found dead 1995, but we know that when they landed, 10,000 were alive. One report, the lake was white with birds, aslumber. We are working to keep additional birds from landing, said an EPA ad man, admitting to thousands already dead, but not saying the pit's full of sulfuric acid, heavy metals, not denying that oil crews ignored bird hazing protocols. But hear the brood wail of snow geese seeking a gosling, the hard day and night audible mourning for upswing. And I wrote this one for my niece, Lisa, when we were in North Carolina, where I'd never been. Duck, Outer Banks, North Carolina, 2016. It may just be these days passing. Suddenly, everything shares history with a grist of bones not quite buried in sand. The fragrance of Mustangs neighing in high grass, descendants of horses brought here by a Spanish king, is as miraculous as my own gamey scent, harnessed by explorers who tried but failed to tame wildness, then, fearful, ran away. But these pure breeds, their numbers waning, pose, content to linger among the cypress stumps and residuum of a 19th century hurricane, the box and snapping turtles, purple martins keeping their eyes on a hungry boar nearby. We visitors are a chestnut brown mirage turned pensive as the horses, the left behinds, see our nostrils flare in brambles of blueberries, grapes, persimmons. And I think, like Pam mentioned, we poets love to play with words and to use them in creative ways to make our points. I was saying to a friend that women used to wear slips, what we called slips, and they don't seem to wear those as much anymore. And I started thinking about that word slip and all the possibilities of it. So this poem is indeed entitled Slip. Some say, I no longer wear one, dismissing the slip. And here, we're not talking panniers, dimity pockets, or pantalettes with open crotches, but see, chemise, so mid-20th century that women are reminded. Liz Taylor fulfilled one to lure Paul Newman, gloriously cast as Brick, cat on a hot tin roof, the slip's most spectacular failure. Slipshod or slippage, but don't ever say that to a man about to reach his ultimate happiness. Skiing the slippery slope away from underskirts that support the smooth look lining of a little black dress, away from what was launched circa 100 AD with the sublaculum, and those were often just lengths of leather. A slip quickly overshadowed in the 1600s by farthingales, frames of wire or whalebone, proceeding to the 1800s drawers, so-called because they had to be drawn on by ladies' maids, then on to poor women, so poor their knickers were sewn from burlap, seemed to hold flour. Then we began slip sliding, half slip, no slip, thong. This is no slip of the tongue, no lapsus linguae. We're all stumbling. See a polar bear swimming from one ice cap to the next as every foundation that has sustained her slips into the sea. There's a form that I like writing in that is called accento. It takes the lines of other poets and recombines them to make a new poem. In this case, I was relying on the poetry of AI, the poet who was Cherokee, Japanese American, and African American.
I love her.
She was a fabulous, fabulous poet. Left us wonderful poems. So this is derived from her work. Dread in the shape of I. The first time I heard the story, I seen trouble coming from a long way off. I was drinking scotch and water. I watched the trade center towers, the victim lying on her side. I said, brother, the world's on fire. I thought I was dreaming, saw flowers beside the railroad tracks, so still beside my bed, the blood trail from the front door, a nightlight in the shape of a bear, a cold fire I could not swallow. And this was for the bootleg fire. I won't give it away, but the article in the New York Times had a word that I had never heard describing what happened weather-wise in this fire, and that's what inspired this poem. Bootleg fire. In California, there were seasons for fires once. When Motown released Martha and her Vandellas Heat Wave, and I shimmied with the doorknob because I was a believer that tomorrow was a vow lit from within, the season usually began with a rudely named Indian summer and was over just about the time the family sat down to gorge on turkey flash dancing with filmy gravy, macaroni and cheese, and collard greens. There's no such season anymore, and fires are no longer content to play by themselves. See how Oregon's bootleg fire isn't fire only, is lightning, is generator of its own weather and the cloud pyrocumulonimbus. Remember Mrs. Dent, second grade, who taught us nimbostratus, cumulus, and we, thinking that was all there was, hung from monkey bars, skipped, rope, stole, home. We were so innocent, so innocent. And again, Pam's advice is good. Sometimes when you read things, it will give you really good ideas to write from. And that's why I think she and I both would ask young writers, beginning writers, read everything, because you just never know what you're going to find. This poem is entitled Paradise, 579, and it has an epigraph by the poet Joseph Brodsky. There are cities we won't see again. You can study religion all you want. No one can tell you where Elysium is, what latitude or longitude, or whether it has its own philatelic representation in the world. Or someone will tell you that there was once this place named for what no one seems able to find, paradise. That it was a town in Northern California, county of Butte, watered by the Feather and Sacramento rivers and the blood of the Machupta tribe with 413 members enrolled. But that was before the Camp Fire of 2018, about which we now know 86 people have been lost, due to which we know the town of Paradise was almost destroyed by one of the deadliest fires in American disregard. Ask the Machopta about destruction, and they will tell you their tribe was terminated by the feds a long time ago. Their lands sold because their people didn't have enough dollars to upgrade to code, and they wept as venturers drooled. That there are no longer any fluent prolocators of their Kuyunkwaki dialect, a casualty long before the flames, and yet from the ash and a library, one young son of the ancestors found recordings, 579 words, and so reclaimed their language, our talk, he called it, wiping his grandmother's tears. Ain't that paradise after everything?
Wow.
I guess I've been thinking a lot about paradise because this poem is entitled Seeking Paradise. I have said to a lot of people that I think if we live long enough, we're going to be punished by the brutality with which we treated people coming across the southern border. Seeking paradise. Don't tell me how I came to be born by a river. Instead, won't you bring me honeysuckle and applause of Mexican marigolds? Tell me it's true stardust bequeaths its anthems and won't die, so you can bring me a rebanada de cielo that stopped its weeping. Tell me Sam Cooke had it right singing A Change Is Gonna Come. But do not tell me about a child who crossed the Rio Grande to come here, but has been lost to her mother, doesn't know when she will eat again. Don't you know this girl will withstand, then, without warning, kill you while you sleep between twisted sheets? I wish you would bring us jalapenos baked into sweet cornbread, and with it, some green tomatoes, capers, a subtle Casamadero. Won't you bring us memories of a dog, a ball, or all of Saturday to do what children want Saturday to do? Why can't you be kind? Why won't you in paradise us? And I think I'll just read one more. And thank you so much for listening. And again, thanks for the invitation. To never make anything in your life will deplete you. And hands know it. See how they tremble. So much time has elapsed since my hands designed a love trap or counted stars with each finger. They still yearn, but also they have gnarled with age, and the trembling is such an old desire. Yesterday, muscle memory recollected a time when those hands kneaded dough for a favorite snack, brown sugar walnut bread. My hands' sinew recalled a crude chopping of walnuts, 4 cups at a time, the pushing, patting, rolling out of the dough into a rectangle 20 inches long, spreading the walnuts on half of one short side, then folding the other half over as a cover. I pressed it into place and then again until the tender dough hid each of the walnuts completely, and with such rhythm in its making, like the rhythm of a Mahara thuck, a bronze drum which the ancients have said were inhabited by spirits and gave no right of personal ownership, but could be a call to a common task, sense of duty, sense of belonging. Belonging being that gem we cannot replace when hands unmake what has once thrived. Mosques, some displaced persons, see E-Prophets sculpture Congolese, or Chase Rabal's monument to 11,000 victims of the Middle Passage. Or my hands can lay still until their skills exposed, I write a defiance in my singular script, awakened as if from sleeping, to cast spells, to hiss my black jaguar breath and conspire with the shapeshifters to ensure nothing, no thing will diminish me. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn, for that exalted, erudite, eloquent reading. Both of you have just been transfixing. I could listen to you both forever. I would like to ask you, Lynn, a couple of different type of questions.
Sure.
Since you are the Poet Laureate of Los Angeles, what is one or two things, yay for LA?
Thank
you. Are great LA poets and American poets for that matter. But what are a couple of things that have surprised you about being the Poet Laureate in LA, for LA? And also just give us a little snapshot of what you do with your time regarding that position.
Sure. I think the thing that has surprised me the most is that a large number of people read and enjoy poetry. Poets tend to think we're just reading to each other and nobody else really cares. But then I remember what I tell people when I get the question, well, really, poetry, does it really matter? And I say, listen, People may go long stretches of time without reading a poem. But if someone dies, gets married, graduates, has a baby, there's a trauma such as what's going on the planet in so many ways right now. Who do they call? They call the poets. That's why they reacted the way they did when Amanda Gorman read at President Biden's inauguration, because she said what so many people were feeling. So I really don't worry about poetry, but it's really nice to know factually that, yes, people are very engaged with language in that way. And so keeping me busy as a poet laureate is doing wonderful readings like this. I do as many as my calendar can handle, and as much as listening to my own voice can stand. I am a little sick of that, but I love doing them. And also I have a podcast that's on Spotify and Apple Podcast in the library website. I do one poem a week with a short little introduction. People can get their poetry fix for anywhere from 2 to 3 minutes. I don't read any of my own work. I try to read the work of other poets. And that's been a lot of fun to look for voices to read. And in other ways, I just try to include as many of the LA poets who are fantastic in as many different ways as possible. So the fact that I got to do this with Pam is one little check. I'm not done with you, Pam, so just don't even think it. But that's just one check. But that's really important to me, to expose those voices, not only to the Los Angeles crowd, which is first and foremost from the city's perspective, but to the world at large, because we have some pretty, amazing poets in Los Angeles.
I agree. Pam, I mentioned, is a UCLA grad. Where did you what school did you go to?
So I went to Scripps College. Well, first of all, like Pam, I'm a native. This is very rare to have two native Angelenos together because so many people come here from other places. But I went to Dorsey High School and then Scripps College in Claremont, part of the Claremont colleges. And I am a lawyer by training, so I went to Southwestern University School of Law here in LA.
Wow, I never knew that.
I'm full of surprises.
I almost went the lawyer route myself, but then at UCLA, I got derailed, started working on the Black student paper, got into graphics.
Exactly.
And what I like about Lynne is that she plays with the form. When you read her books, it's more than just reading Lynne's poetry. There's all different kinds of poetic forms. And I love that she just explores that. Myself as a visual artist, I try to take the form in different ways, like multimedia, applying graphic design and making story posters, doing readings that seem like stage plays, like I Didn't Survive Slavery for this. And then, in fact, the girls that I was with, Jaha and V. Kali and Wendy James, they're like, Pam, we can't do this. We're not actors. I'm like, it's just a poetry reading on steroids.
Exactly.
And so just play with it. And that's what I would tell young people. Play with the form in what it looks like, how it presents, and also like Lynne does in all its manifestations, because that will actually help to push your poetry out, take you out of your comfort zones.
Exactly.
And you'll learn more by studying and hearing other people. Like the great Harry, you're a great poet too, man.
Exactly.
I feel grateful to have you both here. I love both of your poetry. You're both so great with words too. I asked Pam this question, and I will ask you, what would you tell Lynne, a young woman sitting down to write her first poem? Where would you tell her to focus her concentration? Would it be an idea, an image, words?
Well, I think I want to bounce off of something that Pam said that I find very useful for myself, because the assumption by non-writers is, oh, you just have all of these great ideas and you sit down and you write this wonderful poem. And sometimes that happens, but a lot of times that doesn't happen. But Pam said something that I use a lot, and that is eavesdropping on conversations. I mean, you'll just get a little snippet of something. I would say, to any beginning writer, never be without some kind of paper, a tiny journal, the back of a paper bag, whatever it takes, or put it in your phone. For young people, I guess that's what they do. But you will hear amazing things in the supermarket, at church, standing in line to get your COVID shot. And those little snippets will give you jumping off points when maybe you wouldn't have organically had that thought yourself. But I was going to read a poem today that I didn't read because I didn't want to take too much time. But years ago, I was in Indiana and I had heard about these covered bridges, and I wanted to see what happened, where these bridges were, and to drive out to them. So I asked the woman at the hotel desk if there was a map or whatever. And I'll never forget it. As soon as she said it, I said, this is so going to be in a poem. She said, here's a map, but you better go early, girl. It's like Deliverance out there. I just thought, oh my God, I know I'm going to use that. And in fact, I did use that.
It's funny you should say that, because I just heard Gabrielle Union say, girl, I can go from 0 to prison in 2 seconds. I said,
yeah, you just know you're going to use it. Exactly. You know you're going to use it. Exactly.
That's right.
Early on in my career, I was sitting down at a Venice coffee shop, and I heard some guy say something. I used it in a poem, and it was, don't make the rain dirty.
Exactly. And haven't we done that? So, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think people don't realize that they're philosophers in some way. They're just kind of throwing these things out there, and it's up to the writers to capture them and use them in ways that reflect what we're all living through.
Well, William Carlos Williams, in one of his interviews, he talked about the American idiom and hearing the American language. And he used an example of a Polish guy using the phrase, I'll kick you eye. Not I'll kick you in the eye, but I'll kick you, Y-U-H, I'll kick you eye. And so
wow.
You women are both excellent at precision in your writing. And it's 1 minute to 2. And Jennifer Clymer, our wonderful director, is there. Jennifer, I want to thank Lynn once again, and Pam. And then here's Jennifer Clymer to wrap it up and bless us once again.
I got to say, on International Women's Day, it could not have been more fitting to have you two amazing, powerful, creative women join us. Pam knows how much I love her, and I want to give you the chance to talk a little bit about where people can find your book. And then, Lynn, I have one thing that I would love to share.
Sure.
You can find me, PamWardWriter.com. I'm also on Amazon, World Stage Press. I think I threw a link in the chat for where you could buy the book. And, so that's me, PamWardWriter.com. Lynn has a great website too. Go ahead, Lynn.
Lynn,
I'm trying to remember Lynne Thompson US. That's it.
Lynne Thompson US.
Lynne Thompson US. There it is.
Plain simple. It was so simple, I almost forgot it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And tomorrow we're marking the 2-year anniversary of when the world kind of changed for us at MPTF. And we're doing a show called Silver Linings. Because we want to look at all of the positivity that came out of it, all of I've talked with a staff member about this. The lotus flower grows out of the most horrible, disgusting filth that's on the bottom of the river. You have this beautiful, or pond, or wherever lotus flowers grow, I apologize. But you have something beautiful that can come out of something terrible. And I want us to have the opportunity to celebrate that. But Lynn, when you started one of the poems with, to never make anything in your life will deplete you, that just struck me to the core, because that's what we've been doing for 330 episodes of this live show, giving people like Harry an opportunity to keep working that muscle and to make sure that they are never depleted.
And I just want to give a shout out to the poet Brenda Shaughnessy, because that title of that poem was from a line of her poem. So just the last tidbit and suggestion for new writers, find a line of a poem you like, use it as a title, and write from there. So I'm glad it resonated with you.
It did. This whole hour was not long enough. We need more time in this hour.
Well, thank you so much for having us both. This has been a delight. And thank you to the listeners.